we joke that everybody's like at least 3% evil or 5% evil. Like we just joke about it.
Yeah.
And then when somebody does some evil little nudgy thing, we're like, oh, there it is. So and so shows 3% evil. But I think it's so helpful to think about that rather than, and to just accept that, the process of accepting it makes it so that when we are inevitably human and we inevitably have darker thoughts or feelings or those difficult emotions, the anger, the rage, whatever it is, where it's like, oh, I see you. It's there. It's not like there's a shame. When you can accept that this is part of you, that then it's like you just bounce back. It's not like you need to punish yourself for having this thing in you.
And I think, so I came at it. I mean, obviously it was really distressing to me that I was having those experiences, but I also, I guess through my training as an analyst, I also was curious about it. So I was curious about my clients' anger at their kids. I was curious about my anger at my kids. I'm like, what is this? What is this about? Let's move in. Let's get closer. Let's find out more about it. And and I do think that it kind of invites self-compassion to be curious. It's like, well, okay, I yelled at my kid. I'm sorry I did that, but let me get curious about it and maybe I can have some compassion. And I think like you're saying, like in some ways modeling that kind of shows our kids that anger is something that can be survived. And of course there is this rhythm of rupture and repair, so you get angry and then you repair it hopefully. And I was always really good at that. And, I'm a good apologizer, just, hey, mommy spoke to in a way that I wish I hadn't. And I'm really sorry. And so, hopefully it makes anger a little bit less scary for them because anger is important. There are these kind of benefits of anger. One of the, and I have some stories in the book about that. And one of the things that happened to me when I was, when my kids were little was I knew this mom who had, she came from a kind of abusive situation and she had promised herself she would never get angry at her daughter. And it was, and she didn't, she would like nearly explode, but she would leave the room. She never yelled. And it was a very odd thing spending time with this mom and her little girl because one time I went over to their house and the mom went upstairs to get something and this little girl, like I watched her, she just pushed my daughter for no reason. And I said, hey, we don't push or something like that. And the mom came down and she said, oh, she doesn't push. And I was like, well, she just did. But it was my kind of analysis of that later was, it's like the mom couldn't allow it in herself. So there was no way for the little girl to relate to her own anger and aggression, which are actually important for us to have a relationship with, that's kind of the thesis of my second book, The Vital Spark, but like, yeah, it's problematic and it can be destructive, but you don't want to, you don't want to amputate it. Like you need to figure out how to have your teeth and your claws in life. And what better way to do that than to have it, to be in relationship with it and have your mom in relationship with it and managing it, hopefully. But also sometimes you don't manage it perfectly.
Yeah.
And anger's messy.
Yeah. It's not always going to be wrapped up in a perfect rupture repair bow.
Right.
It's going to be, the middle path is messy. By its nature. Never, the extremes are so clear and I think enticing because there's clarity in them. But in the middle where the wisdom is very, very messy.